Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 50 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be joined by stock car driver and Hollywood stuntman Stanton Barrett is set to join us for a fascinating conversation that we'll be bringing to you in just a few moments from right now. Plus, we'll have our news and notes segment and our Ask David segment coming up at the end of the show as well. David Starr joins me right now. David, always a pleasure, my friend, to have you here with us. You've been staying pretty busy the last couple of days. Nice time at the Mavericks game with the boys, right?
Man, no, that Sunday evening was awesome. We had floor tickets and watched the Mavericks and play the Chicago Bulls, and what a heck of a game. My oldest boy, DJ, is a big basketball player, and man, he loved it. We had a great time. And Sunday morning, my youngest son, Vancy, was baptized, so that was kind of cool. And man, it was a busy week last week with racing sponsorship meetings, and really worked on a lot of our racing school stuff there at the Texas Motor Speedway. So it's been a busy week last week, and had a great weekend. And man, it's just and then back at it this week. You guys know how it is. Just trying to get ready for our 2022 season and bring everything together so we can announce something soon.
Oh yeah, guys, we're just over a month away from Daytona and less than a month away from the Clash at the LA Coliseum. So the racing season is going to be here before we know it. The incomparable Dominic Aragon of the RacingExperts.com is here with us as well. Dom, how we doing?
Oh, Tyler, you're doing even better after introduction like that. Great to join you guys again tonight.
Good to see you, buddy.
Oh, you too, David. Yeah, it looked like you had a lot of fun this weekend. A very busy weekend.
Well, hey, we always try to live our life like every day's Christmas. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Tyler, a wise man once said, by the last name is Starr, you got to live every day like it's your birthday.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, guys, we got a great guest this week. Dominic, give us the rundown. Tell us about Stanton before we bring him in.
Sure. So we're talking a guy that has raced in all three of NASCAR's National Touring Series at one point. He's tried his hand at IMSA, IndyCar racing, among other disciplines of racing. He started racing at the age of 16 in karts, won everything he touched in there. And he's also worked as a stuntman on a lot of Hollywood films, probably at least over 150 films, according to our research. I'm sure Stanton knows the exact number. Stanton, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Good to be here. Good to see all you guys.
Well, so right now, as it stands, January 2022, how many films have you been a stuntman or Hollywood stunt double in?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a tough one because, when you look it up, it doesn't always show everything. But I think it's just a little bit over 300 between TV shows and films.
Wow.
So whether I was doing stunts, directing, or, stunt coordinating or whatever. So quite a lot to be in.
When I think about it, guys, when David probably can attest to this so much, race car drivers, there's an instinct of mine, a no fear of some sorts. That I never really thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense that a race car driver would be a stuntman. I mean, you guys, this goes right in your DNA, I would think, Stanton, of just not fearing some of these things they put you through.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of no fear, even though I like to think that, in some regards, we have to have that a little bit, right? In parts of life in general, whatever you do. But I think it's more of a calculation of what you're capable of doing and analyzing situations and also being prepared to, tackle whatever it is that you're putting yourself into. So it's not so much a thing of fear. I think if you don't have some fear, you go over the limits and you make big mistakes or you do really costly things. So I don't know. I feel like in some regards, maybe if I wasn't a stuntman, I would have taken different risks racing because it didn't matter. Like, I just, I can crash this guy or that guy or do whatever. But you're always analyzing all the risks. So you're being more cautious in a way because you're analyzing all the risks. Like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, or maybe I don't want to, put myself in that spot. Or, I see guys crashing guys all the time, and you're like, man, did he even realize how dangerous that was for the other driver? So I don't put myself in that position because I don't want to I'm like, that's stupid. Now in racing, you can be put in all kinds of situations, but it might be more of a detriment as far as a result circumstance that I was a stuntman and stunt coordinator, and you're analyzing all the dangers and scenarios and, whatever. But one thing it did help is avoiding, I think, wrecks and stuff, because you're always looking so intently on everything, and you're watching people's movements, even though you don't see them in the car. But as David knows, you can kind of see the tires move. You can see how the car's reacting. You can see little things like, hey, this is not going to be a good situation. So, or when they're crashing, just using physics, which we use a lot in stunts, and common sense, and some, engineering, mental engineering, just looking the lay of the land and angles and speed, and and like angles they're hitting, and you kind of anticipate where they're going to probably go. That's a really big benefit too. So pros and cons are on the stunt stuff and in the background there. I would say I wouldn't say it's no fear, because obviously when you risk your life, you got to have some fear, or you're just stupid. And I don't really perceive myself as being stupid too much. I mean, I am a little bit, but I think it's more on a smart standpoint. It's just, you're getting thrown so much stuff in a race car, whether it's practice or setup or situation, and analyzing stuff. I think that kind of stuff, because you're just throwing the same elements in films. You're getting thrown stuff, seat of the pants. Like, you might have a huge scene with 20 guys doing this choreograph, and say you're on a motorcycle and you're near missing cars. Well, one person does something a little different, you have to adjust right then, or you're toast. Same as like qualifying. Like, when you go risk it and you're doing way above the fine line to get that extra time, you got to adjust. Like, it just doesn't work out the way you hoped, and things happen, so you have to adjust really quick. So I think they have a lot of similarities and correlations that help each other, but I don't know. I think definitely not fearless,
Right.
Which again is kind of can be a bad thing a little bit, because ignorance is bliss at some point.
Yeah. So Stanton, man, it's very interesting to hear you talk. I always wondered, I'm so interested in the race car driver side of Stanton Barrett, but man, I gotta, we usually say, hey man, take us back to the start. You know what I mean? Take us back. Tell us where the love of stock car racing, the love of American auto racing. You've driven Indy cars, IMSA, trucks, Busch, Xfinity, Cup Series. But man, I'm curious about the Hollywood, the films. How did that happen? I mean, it's not. I mean, I've been in NASCAR for 25 years. And one of the biggest things I hear, a lot of people talk about you, have been for a long time. And everybody's so intrigued with Stanton Barrett. It's like, man, this guy's a Hollywood filmmaker, you know what I mean? And some of the cool films you made. But I guess my question to you is, take us back to the beginning. How did that even come about? Was your dad involved in that, an uncle? I mean, take us back to the start.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to grow up like I did. I never anticipated doing stunts ever. I actually wanted to fly fighter jets, and then by the time I was, 16, I already broken, 50 bones. So my dad was like, I'm not flying jets. I had impeccable eyesight, and high-end coordinating, all that stuff. I love planes. I started flying when I was really young, but that wasn't really an option. I was terrible in school, hated school. So I don't know if I get into the Air Force Academy. That's a long story, school stuff. I mean, I was really good in school, but I did get put back in second grade because I read slow, but I memorized everything I read. And then I skipped sixth grade when my parents separated in Colorado. I walked into school, and this is off subject, but back then it's different than today. Your parents just drop you off first day of school. I'm like, okay, I have sixth grade and then seventh, then I'm in the junior high and high school. I can't skip anymore. So dad drops me off and go to the principal. Well, what grade are you? I'm like 7th. And she was lying. because I was in 6th. I'm like, no, I'm in 7th. She calls my dad and he goes, she goes, he says he's in 7th grade. He goes, yeah, do whatever the boy wants, hangs up the phone on her. She looks at me. So anyways, I skipped my year back. I lost when I was in 2nd grade, but from then I was behind. So it took me a while. I just didn't like school. I liked math and science. I did like history. But I did learn typing in high school, and that was the best thing I ever learned, because I typed super fast.
Right.
So back to, I got into it with my dad. I mean, my brother and I grew up skiing every day, riding motocross. We raced professionally in motocross and skiing, and I grew up rock climbing in my backyard. I lived in one of the best places in the country for bouldering and rock climbing and just outdoor sports in general. So we had developed a lot of skills early on that kind of also apply. And with my dad being a stuntman, and that's how I got into it. We
Okay.
like Burt Reynolds and Paul Newman, Steve McQueen. But my
Hey,
dad was
did you say Steve McQueen?
yeah, my dad did a little bit with him.
Wow.
Young and those things, but primarily he was Paul Newman's and Burt Reynolds stunt double, which he has a great story along there. So I grew up with my dad being a stuntman, and we just thought that was making movies was normal. So he taught us from when I could ever remember. I have pictures when I was like 4 or 5 years old with boxing gloves and this and that. And my brother and I we would jump off the house and see how high we could go. We were literally jumping like 15 feet off our house when we were 7 years old. So that was cool. And I don't know how we didn't get hurt worse or dead, but we'd purposely wreck our bicycles down grass hills to see who could wreck the best. Just stupid stuff, right? But that's what we did. So I guess just through him being in film and teaching us like how to fight, how to box, karate, techniques, around, because it's different to know something and then make it look good on film. And then you have all the technical aspects of film and safety. So, I just grew up around it. Unfortunately, my dad was one of the most famous stuntmen, and I grew up around him and Mickey Gilbert and Hal Needham, who owned, the Skull Bandit car, who my dad, Hal and Paul and Bert, my dad got them involved to do after his rocket car, stock cars. So I never thought I'd race cars. I always loved it. I was Paul Newman's godson. I was around it with my dad and Paul. But my brother and I, we were always into motocross and skiing, and that's what we did. And then, when I became old enough, I'm like, maybe we'll try driving go-karts and race cars. And my dad actually sent us to Buck Baker's school. And when I was 16, my brother was 17.
That's
amazing. I drove across country to meet my brother there. When I was 16, got in and we had a blast.
Hal Needham, Burt Reynolds, man. I mean, I don't know if you guys, Tyler and Dominic, you guys were alive, but man, these guys were, like Stanton said, Hal Needham, he owned Harry Gant's car, I believe. And you'd always see, I would see him on TV. I was watching on TV. Stock car racing magazines always had pictures of Hal Needham and Burt Reynolds because they were big stars. So, Stan, if I want to ask, did I hear you right? Did your dad got them involved in NASCAR racing? Is that correct?
Yes. So when my dad, because he worked with those guys in films and became, basically best friends. Hal was my dad was Hal's protege, and when they met and kind of brought it up, and there's a whole backstory between different characters and how they all met, which is really pretty fun and interesting. But after the rocket car, which Hal owned, the Budweiser rocket car, when my dad did that and broke the speed of sound on the ground, they like, well, let's go racing. And so Hal got involved, and they, my dad got Bert and Paul and go, let's do, a race team. And they went to school, and I'm not sure how that school thing worked out, but they got it together. So it was a 22 with my dad, and then just shortly after they put on Aragon's 33. And then my dad got out of racing that same year. I think he ran 15 races or something.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, I kind of grew up around some amazing people that were both influential in film and also exposed me to race cars. I never thought, I thought racing was cool and whatever, but I never thought I would, I never thought I'd be a stuntman either. And then my dad started doing movies. Movies went from like Westerns to a bit of cars, and then kind of into more extreme sport, crazy stuff, which my brother and I were at professional level at a lot of those things. So I don't know if my dad was trying to get rid of my brother and I by putting us in son, or he's like, all right, my two kids, I just hire these two. I don't have to hire 20 other guys with all these different skills. So we had a lot of fun together though.
Man, is your brother still a stuntman also? Is he still involved?
No, he directs and produces. He still does some stunts. I got him a job this week, actually, with a buddy of mine in Hawaii, the job that I just left. But primarily he's a TV director and producer. So he directed Blue Bloods and producer director of Blue Bloods, co-executive producer on that for the last 7 years, but mostly he directed one film, and he does a lot of CBS TV and different things. He's done tons of different
amazing
directing, and kind of got out of the stunt world and into that. Now he's, I don't know, midlife crisis, does more stunts off and on now, and directs and stunt coordinates and whatever.
Yeah.
We've been doing it a long time.
Yes.
So
I think he's looking more at retirement than hitting the ground.
Of the movies you've worked on and such, what have been some of your favorites? What have been some of your favorite projects that come to mind over the years?
I think as far as, I get that asked a lot, and it's so hard because I've been so lucky and been on so many amazing movies. But I think a lot of the period pieces are super cool. Or fantasy like Batman or something, where you're in a different world, but we make it come to life. Those are a lot of fun. And I'll go back and name a few that are my favorite, but a lot of the time your favorite film is the people you work with in those moments that you shared during the movie making magic part of it, and after work and stuff like that, or certain locations. But I'd have to say some of my favorite, probably my favorite ones are ones I worked with both my brother and my dad at the same time. So we did in a series. Well, we did Bandit together, how it was a series that ABC had. They did an action-packed series. I was racing cars at this time too, but early in my career, I think it was in '93 or '94, and that's when I was running late models at Concord and a little bit of the Busch series.
Right.
But it was, and we did a series called Extreme on ABC, and that was in Utah. And I mean, we were doing huge skiing stunts and bikes and helicopters and just snowmobiles. On my day off, I stayed in bed because I could barely move. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I can't even move. My brother's like, I can't ski and come out. I'm like, I can't move. You aren't doing the same stunts I'm doing. So, so, getting to work with my dad and brother at the same time, because, my dad was pretty old, actually. Well, he's young in a way, but still old when we started. Because I've been doing film since 1988.
Wow.
And racing cars since '91. So, I think it would have been really fun to do more stuff, but, I got to work with my dad, my brother, Hal, Mickey Gilbert, some of the best people. I've got to double my godfather to like everybody. So I would say the favorite ones are those two, because I got to work with my dad, brother a lot and doing some really big stunts, and also learning from the best. Outside of that, like Jurassic Park was great.
Wow.
I did the early ones. So Stan Winston was around. We got to work with Spielberg. we had the animatronic dinosaurs, so they were real, and you had guys in suits, making them work. Like, they move their hands, they blink their eyes, the dinosaur eyes blink, they do, So I got to work, like that was a really fun one. You're even though it's, sci-fi in a way, but dinosaurs were real.
Yeah.
We put ourselves back in that time and everything was like, you're doing scenes. I remember in the plane crash, we crash the plane and do all this stuff, and the dinosaur, or before that, comes in and tears the nose off, and the dinosaur head's in there, trying to attack it. Well, that thing's basically real. If he hits me, I'm like, I had this. It's a hard carbon fiber and fiberglass mix, like dinosaur. It felt like a real dinosaur was coming in there chomping at you. So, those kind of things are always like some of the coolest stuff. I think period pieces are cool too, because you're reliving history, and you're really in the moment, right? You're in the same clothes. You're being taught the history, which that was one of my favorite things in school besides PE. Was history, just to learn that stuff. So, historically, like I did Gods and Generals, Patriot, Last of the Mohegans.
Wow.
So those kind of films are fun because you're going back in time, and it feels bombs going off, you're shooting muskets, you're actually loading them normally, things like that. Really puts you, if you take the time to take the time for the moment, you go back in time with what happened, and it's kind of awing. I remember on Gods and Generals, just we had literally 1,000 extras on each side, and we're doing these, obviously they're not real bullets, but when you're firing muskets at guys, and we're having bombs go off from cannons, and you're seeing people blow up, us stunt guys, and you're really in that moment, and you think about what these people went through for our freedom and stuff, and just war and stuff. It's like living a book or living in history. So those kind of films to me are probably the funnest, and then also just, again, who you work with. So as far as moments go, favorites, those would be some of them. I don't know. That's a long-winded answer to your question.
Man, Stan, these movies, we watch them on television, and you make them, it's like we can't comprehend anything you're telling us. We hear it, and it's the coolest thing, and very intriguing and interesting, but man, I don't know much about no movie making, dude. That's amazing to hear you explain that. Guys, that's so cool. Wow, that's amazing,
And then you really feel like, in Gods and Generals, I was one of the guys there's 3 deserters or whatever. I forget. But anyways, we were going to get killed by our general or whatever. So we're blindfolded. We walk up. It was Wilford Brimley's son, Gus. There's another guy who doubles Matthew McConaughey a lot, good buddy, and me. So they picked us to be the guys that are the deserters that get executed. Well, they dig us our graves, and this is where you're like, shit, this was, well, I'm saying,
that's right. It's real.
It's podcast. It's okay.
It's unfiltered. Yeah.
Shoot, this feels real. Like we're walking, and they're gonna go, well, we have it. So they're called squibs when you get shot. They're the blood packs that go on your. Normally they're packed like
Right.
Metal. So you have the explosive, the blood going this way, and then you have a metal plate, and then you have like neoprene behind that, and hopefully you have something tight. So when it explodes, it doesn't slap you, right? So most
Right.
blood packs are 1. Just figure like the 1 firecracker.
Okay.
You can feel it, especially in certain wardrobes. Like, okay, well, we're gonna put these. You're getting shot by these big muskets, right? All right, sounds good. So we have this canvas kind of clothing on because it's back, in 19 whatever.
Right.
and they're like, you have a 5 on you. So that's like probably like, what's the next size up? People used to throw them down the toilets, you know. So it'd be like putting 25 firecrackers in a
Wow.
thing. And you're gonna have one in the front. We need to see the back, so they put on the front back.
Right.
I'm like, you're gonna feel it. I'm like, great. So we had to like, get shot, fall, like I think about 3 feet into the grave. These things hit us, and because the clothing was like loose and out like that far, it hit.
hurt.
I thought somebody hit me with a sledgehammer, and we all got shot. They go try to, you know, not act like you're falling back, and you know, of course we know how to act when we get shot, but we thought we got shot.
You earned your money that day, huh?
Oh man, it was the worst thing in air. You could hear us all in the grave and almost the crew laughing because it was a pretty big blood explosion, and we hit the ground. But we're all aired out, and you could hear us moaning down there.
That's funny, Stanton.
It's like, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Stanton, tell us. So, man, you know, I don't think anybody in the industry, you know, and just auto racing, IndyCar, drag racing, NASCAR, I don't think anybody has experienced what, you know, I mean, I don't think I don't know or know of another stunt person or know anybody that makes movies like yourself. You know, it's amazing. But I guess my question is, you know, those stunts, when you're doing these cool stunts and getting shot and falling in a freaking grave, is that like winning a race? I mean, you know, the excitement we feel and the competition and running 180, 190 miles an hour, or 200 miles an hour, you know, that adrenaline and the competition. I mean, it's hard to describe what that means, you know, what I feel and how awesome that is. But with all that being said, do you get that same feeling racing cars as you do being so successful and being a stuntman and being successful and making an awesome movie and doing awesome stunts? Is it the same feeling or is it different?
It's different. I mean, for example, when we got shot, you're like, any idiot could do this. I don't know how fun this is, or glorifying, or smart, or whatever. Right. But you know, it's different because from a technology standpoint, technical standpoint, there's similarities. It's gratifying because, you know, a lot of what we do is not just going out driving right as fast as we can and taking risk or whatever. There's a lot to it. There's a lot, or at least to me, I feel like maybe I overthink stuff because that's the way my mind works. But it's the same with stunts. You're being thrown so many different elements. Yeah, you might have to go ride this bike and crash into a car and fly over another car and hit the ground. Well, you know that's going to hurt, but then you're also analyzing all the scenarios of how you make it look right, how you make it look like it's a real crash, because it is, but how you cheat certain, you know, how I leave the bike, but I don't want to leave too early, otherwise it looks like I jumped, and how you wreck so it looks like a wreck, but you're also hopefully controlling it a little bit, and then when you hit the ground, which is going to hurt. So I guess from more on the stunt side, it's more for me, of course, completing something big that few people know how to do or would do or haven't had the opportunity to do is exciting. And I don't know if it's adrenaline, it's just, I think it's a sense of accomplishment and success, and you gain respect of your peers and those on set. So, you know, we don't get our fame from media and, you know, people knowing us, but we sure, after doing big stunts, get respect from our crew, and that's gratifying just to know you did a job and did it well, and fly under the radar, and you're kind of the unsung hero, and you don't demand anything, no fame, or, you know, I don't care about any of that stuff. Right. But to me, it's not so much adrenaline, because there's so much pressure put on you. It's like qualifying. There's not a lot of adrenaline there. All you have, like, Well, when we were started out, you actually had to qualify to get into the race.
Right.
Now, it's a different story. So that was everything. You risk, you try to go for that extra 2/10 or whatever, that could cost you 4/10 and you're out of the race. That 2/10 could put you in the top 10, but the 4/10 put you out of the race. So it's tons of pressure, and you have to do everything perfect in your car. If it doesn't react perfect, you have to make super quick adjustments on the fly, and hopefully you corrected whatever enough just to make the race, right? It's that kind of pressure that I put on myself, and I feel when I do most, not all stunts, because not all stunts are that complicated, but a lot of the ones I've done, and fortunate that I'm in the position to do those kind of things. There's a tremendous amount of pressure, and I would just identify it in relationship to qualifying. I mean, the race is easy. You get in, you start, you can build some momentum, you can strategize, you can get into a groove. It's not that way in qualifying. You're coming out of pits and you're through 4 gears and you're flat out. You're trying to build as much speed. Everything's like throwing all caution to the wind, right? So there's a little bit, in my opinion, on big stunts. Now, again, not every stunt like that is that way, but even some of the simple stuff, because you have to think about what the camera sees, what the viewer sees, how it overlaps with either your actor that you're doubling in the scene, or if you're not doubling somebody or whatever, if you're another key element, how does it look? How do you, you can't do things that you think in your mind is right, like normal living. You have to do things and understand film and camera and technique.
Sure.
And in engineering stuff, I'm always doing cool stuff where I'm engineering. Like I just engineered a pipe ramp, it's a new Jeep. Nobody's really ever flipped one. They want to make sure it's crapshoot a little bit, but try to get a certain look out of it. Flip once onto the hood. You have to train different asphalt, so I designed the ramp for that. And so there's a lot of engineering in mind and common sense. Someone say some common sense, but more experience and just simple engineering, which is a real fun part of racing for me. So very mechanical and love setups and knew a lot about building cars and did it. And so there's different exhilaration elements. I never felt like it, because I've always done things that everybody thinks is adrenaline. It's more, whether I'm extreme skiing and jumping off cliffs or motorcycle riding or racing. I think it's more of challenge your physical abilities and to the highest degree, because you're taking, like, if I'm skiing a 2,000 foot chute, that if you fall, you're dead. You're really pushing.
We don't do that, do we, guys?
No, but we do that. We do that in racing and other stuff. Maybe not to the degree, but
yeah,
the technical aspect is stuff that's more intriguing to me than anything, or just the precision that it takes to maybe slide around a corner and there's a post here and a car coming this way, and then you gotta get it right to camera or to an actor. Like there's no room for error. And you also have to do it to where it looks right, which is usually not very conservative. So
absolutely. Well, and Stanton, over the years too, you've gotten to drive in some really cool motorsports events across the last 25 years. But I want to ask you too, you made your Cup Series debut in 1999 for Ginny Donlevy. You got to race for Roush Racing in 2003. What was it like to get behind the wheel of some of the most legendary owners in our sport?
Wow.
Yeah, it was super cool. Back to how I got into racing, just like I never thought I always loved racing, but I thought I was gonna be, I was racing for professional motocross, I was ski racing, and like I said, I wanted to fly fighter jets, and I didn't really ever think I would race until I was like old enough to drive. And I had driven anyways when I was younger. My dad taught us some of that, but old enough to drive legally. I was like, well, maybe we should try racing cars. So that's when it came. And from a racing standpoint, I've told this other stories. I've got to, I think I was 8 or 9 years old when my dad was the Skull Bandit team. I remember going to Darlington testing with my dad. And
Wow.
we had bicycles, I rode bicycles and everything. And he was a workaholic. So we brought our bicycles down. I got to ride around Darlington, the racetrack, on my bicycle. And I always remember that day. I had no idea I'd ever be back there to race. So,
Dude, that is a cool story. Wow.
I didn't grow up like Dale Earnhardt Jr. or something, but I did grow up around it. It just never registered that I would be racing cars. And so I remember those moments and pulling into Daytona, or when I raced Darlington, and remembering when I was there with my dad, and I'm flipping racing cars here at the same spot. I had no idea when I was 8 years old that I would be in the race car here. So to me, I do feel like I have heritage in racing, but not in the same way as, some of the second, third generation drivers.
Sure.
I felt like it was far removed, but I got engaged to it. And yeah,
it's still cool how it comes full circle.
So awesome. I remember the first time going in the tunnel of Daytona when I was driving. I'd been there with my dad and stuff, but like that was big time. At Daytona racing.
Absolutely.
And you see Jeff Gordon in front of you, and these other guys, Dale Earnhardt. Because back when I started the Busch Series, there was Dale Earnhardt racing full time. Richard Petty was racing full time. Bobby Allison was racing full time. Darrell Waltrip was racing full time. You had there was 25, 30 Cup drivers running in Busch. You're like, how am I going to race against these guys? I mean, when you're young, you think you're capable, but still, realistic, like, you don't have experience. Like, how are you going to do with these guys? So it was pretty awesome to get to race and pull up to these places that I got to go experience with my dad or Richard Childress, because I worked in Richard's shop. Because my dad helped him when he was in the Skull Bandit buy some tires, and Richard was broke. So no, he wasn't going to race Talladega one race. And I was like, no, I'm going to buy you some tires. And I think literally that was one of the biggest turning points in Richard's business. And so my dad and Richard became pretty close, and I went to work just, like, to gain experience.
Right.
Richard shop, sweeping the floors, learn how to paint, which I'm an artist, so I enjoyed painting and I learned how to paint. But Dale Earnhardt always said, hey, if you want to be a good driver, you need to learn, work, and understand race cars. Work on them, build them, understand. Like, perfect.
Did he tell you this? Did he tell you this, Stanton? Dale Earnhardt?
Yeah, no, I was sitting with him. I think I was I'd have to really think, but I was with him because I was working with Richard, and my dad was fairly close with Dale, and he's like, if you want to be a good driver, learn how to work. I'm like, perfect. Well, I know how to work on motorcycles and tear apart, rebuild engines. I know suspension. I'm going to go work on race cars. And that's what I went to do and learn. And that's probably why I was fortunate to be able to get far enough along in my career, because early on I was building my own late models and doing every setups and building them. And same with when I first got into the Busch Series, built or took stuff that was mediocre and made them good. So it's kind of funny, even though I didn't grow up in it, I feel like I did, and I went to high school in I went to 6 high schools all over the country, but I ended up graduating in North Carolina. So I feel like I have, growing up in North Carolina and California, 2 different, like, really cool industries.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Man, it's so interesting to hear you speak about, man. It's just amazing. You could write, I mean, you ought to be on your 3rd or 4th book, dude. That's amazing, man. You got so many great stories. It's unbelievable. So Judy Donlevy, I mean, obviously,
going back to those guys.
Yeah.
My point was I went to the track with these guys and with my dad, and then so my dad raced with Judy, and I got the opportunity, and I don't know who the heck called me, but they were having problems, like they weren't qualifying, they weren't running good, and I was kind of known for qualifying well.
Right.
And so I got a deal with them, and I think it was it was Nestle and maybe Folgers or one of those coffee cup. We're on the car, and I still have the race suits. It was cool. And I have the die cast because my dad raced. I'm like, man, I'm in a first, my first cup race, even though I was nervous as heck, even though I thought I could drive, but I didn't do very good because that was my first race because I was concerned just getting in the way of somebody or causing a wreck, right? Everybody's like, just be like, well, when you have that mindset to be too careful,
Hey,
you
Stan,
don't do any good.
the kids today, they don't worry about that
No,
anymore.
they don't.
care.
I feel like I paved the way for a lot of the younger guys. I was 18 in my first Busch race.
Wow,
I was the youngest
amazing.
driver in the Busch series until I think about 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem with my career. It's like, how's this 18-year-old qualifying top 15 in a Busch race and running top 10 at Charlotte stuff? Is he ready? Blah, blah. It was a bit controversial, but I feel like I paved the way a little bit. And then Casey Atwood came in, right?
Yeah.
And he was next year, but he was older than I was when I started, but then he had good success, better success than I did. But I felt like we kind of paved the way because back then all the drivers were in their 30s.
Right.
Bobby Labonte, all these guys weren't in, Rob Moroso was, 21 or whatever, but he got killed. And after that, the next youth was like 30. I don't even know if there was anybody in their 20s that was at that level, right?
Sure.
So, it was really cool to be with, to say I got to drive with Junior Dunleavy, and he was such a great guy too, right? And it was a little bit hard because I was in the transition where we were doing a lot of weird stuff with race cars then.
Right.
It wasn't the simple, 3,200 pound spring in the right front, like 14 in there. They were even higher than that back then. So they were we were crossing over into like the old school setup.
Sure.
Like new school, like crazy stuff.
Right.
There's so many. It's kind of because you've been around a long time too. There's so many. It makes my mind.
Oh, it's
great,
crazy
of the technology and motorsports and what we.
Yeah. It's amazing how young you were. I mean, man, the people you were racing for, the people you were racing against, how young you were, you didn't have that much experience, and you're racing in freaking NASCAR with the best in the world, and like you said, qualifying in the top 15, finishing the top 10. Dude, that was amazing.
I didn't finish in the top 10, but I was running up there in a few of those. And
right.
It did catch people's attention. And I remember my first race was, I think, Las Vegas.
Right.
We went to Pocono, and we were pretty fast. But that's when they had the first and second day qualifying.
Sure.
And then you had the second day fastest pull, right?
Right.
So I think I forget. I don't remember where I was in the first day, but it didn't matter because you had to qualify the second day if you're in the top 25.
Right.
And so I remember, and I really feel like I worked hard for my guy. I used to go out, and when people were qualifying, I used to walk, run, drive my car. I would watch everybody. I'd watch how they entered the corner, where they got on the gas. I'd go watch a few in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Well,
hey, you sound like you're fixing to do a stunt, man.
Yeah,
you're studying the deal and engineering it,
So I went up, and I had actually spotted for Dale a few times when I was younger, and then I talked to
Dale
him.
Earnhardt?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I talked to him, and I would always pick people's brain. Was Jeff Gordon or Dale? Because I was friends with quite a few of these guys. Because I don't know. Anyways, they're like, if you want to make all your time up, you make it in tunnel turn. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go watch 1 and 2 for a while, and then I'll go to the tunnel turn. And I watched everybody until it was on the first day and the second day until I had to go. I raced back to my car. So I watched the best guys. And I think it was Dale Earnhardt. I think Darrell Waltrip was in it. I remember who was running for Roush then. It was Chad Little or Kevin LePage, I forget.
Yeah.
Anyways, like, I got to make this race. I watch where I'm like, it doesn't matter what this car does. I'm lifting here and I'm getting on the gas here, and I had to stop. And I did that a lot in qualifying. I go watch people. I'm like, you can't wait to feel it. These are my points. It's going to work or it's not going to work.
I was just saying, man, that's a lot of pressure. I'm going to go here. I don't care what the car feels like.
So I qualified second day fastest with Junie at Pocono. I got the Bud Pole Award. So I'm like, who's this idiot? I mean, they knew I was, but I was still, that was my
So you won the pole.
Yeah, the second day pole award, but I beat Dale Earnhardt. I beat Kevin LePage. He was in the Roush
That's
car.
a big deal, man. Wow.
Yeah, and I got to run the Bud Shootout next year.
So, Daytona, man, that's awesome. Yeah. Wow.
So Jimmy Spencer crashed me, but anyway, he crashed a lot of people.
So, Stanton, a couple more things before we get to our news and notes. I got to ask, you and David have raced for some of the same organizations over the years, whether it was Carl Long or Rick Ware. Any time in particular comes to mind, you and David crossing paths and such?
So I think, well, he ran with Roush, and he ran, I think his first Cup race was Dover, or one of them, when he took over for the 6 car, I think. That was a while ago.
Are you talking about
I was talking about this David here.
Oh, David Starr. Yeah. I thought you said David Reagan. I'm like, okay. Well, yeah, we've raced a ton together.
Yeah, we have.
I think, because there's so many guys, you don't get the chance to meet everybody and talk to everybody. I think the one thing that stood out is we were at Texas, and we had a chance. I think we went to appearance, actually, and we had a chance to talk. And so, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Not in the derogatory, but like, what do you do? What's your background? And then he told me he had his racing school out there and stuff. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, So I think that was the first time I don't know if you remember that day, but I believe it was at Texas, and we were in appearance or something, or maybe it was at the track. But that was the first time I really got to get to know.
Right. I don't even remember that, man. Just over the years, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You've been here. You're probably the only guy that's been doing it. I mean, you got a couple of guys, Matt Kraft and Brendan Gaughan. I
got those guys beat by a long way.
Oh, I know, but man, you've been doing this forever, man. And it's amazing. But man, a lot of people talk about you. How good you are behind the wheel, your ability.
Or not good. I mean, there's different opinions there.
Yeah, but I hear a lot about the stuntman and the Hollywood. All the stunts and the movies you make. I mean, it's really. People in our industry are intrigued with you, and rightfully so. You're well respected, and you've been doing this a long time. We have driven for a lot of the same people, and I wanted to ask you, you've been racing for so long, and how many years? Because I think and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but you come in and you might do half the races or something like that. You know what I mean? But how often are you not interested in racing full time? Or I guess with making movies and being a stuntman, you can't race full time. So you race as much as you can to fulfill both sides, being a stuntman and
it's always been a misconception about my career and my interests. I'm like, well, I don't know at the time anybody that worked harder to be able to race and be in a race car, but I think what stunts allowed me to do, because, people that was from Hollywood, I had money, my dad was famous, so on, the people I hung out with. But I earned being able to race. I worked in race shops. I built cars. I stayed up all night and fell asleep under them because I couldn't function anymore. And I had to be at the late model track at 10 a.m. or something. And I towed the cars. I slept in tents. I remember, one of my first bush races, I slept in the hauler. I snuck in, took showers. I stuck in the hauler, let them close the garage. I didn't have money to go anywhere to sleep. So I slept in the team's hauler in the back of the semi truck. So, you know, that's just one. So it wasn't that I wanted to do movies and race. It's like I had 5 years where I only raced. I didn't have time, and I was making really good money racing. I didn't have time I didn't do any movies, but you know, it was a tool that allowed me to make money, and the ability. Racing's not cheap. I used to spend thousands of dollars a month times on cell phone bills to call sponsors, to print out color copies. That I used to hand draw my proposals. There's all this fancy art. Like, I'm an artist and I can do crazy stuff on the computer, but back then we didn't have it. I used to hand draw race cars and design the cars and put this product, hand draw like pretty paintings or color drawings and make it in my presentations. And I learned that by going to the library, figuring out who corporate people were, VPs, and so on, getting introduced to these guys. I think they felt bad for me. I'd send them these little tiny letters of proposal. I thought this will work. And then learning. So, you know, I paid my dues, and I worked and learned how to build race cars and set up cars. And I think that's what helped me get in. And I would have never had to. I took money I made from a movie. I think it was Free Jack. Long time ago, I took that and made an offer to the dad. Like, I saw a guy, can I run?
Right.
Now my dad knew the guy too, and he got me the test. But from there, he's like, I don't want you running dash cars. They're too dangerous. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Man,
Well, I started working in a shop. It was David Watson. He was up in Boone.
Oh, yeah.
Garage, old mechanic, car automotive shop. It was 5 stalls, greasy, dirty, like regular, but he had a few race cars in there, and I went in and worked on them, and I paid my dude, but I'm like, here's, I don't know, it was like $4,000.
Sure.
Enough, but he's like, okay. I'm like, don't tell my dad.
Yeah.
My dad didn't know my dad didn't know I was actually going to race until we were on literally almost on our way down there.
You know, Stanton, hearing you talk, you know, and I know this because I've seen you for years. You know, you not only can you build them, work on them, fix them, engineering, set them up. You know, you're good with companies. You're good with people. You represent the company, your sponsors well. And, you know, there's not a lot, you know, I listen to you speak, and I think you guys will agree, you know, it wasn't given to you. You went out there and earned it, and went out there, like you said, you made your own proposals. You did your own artwork. It was kind of unique and special that way, but you had some great sponsors over the years, and, you know, nobody's paying for your racing, but your hard work and you know, and a lot of you want to, you know what I mean? And, so that's interesting. I respect that so much because, I have to do the same thing these days and have been for a long time, but man, it's cool. It's cool to have you on our podcast. It's cool that you've been racing for so long. You're just a unique guy, man. So
well, it's fun to be here, and I'm sorry about my long-winded, but I don't always answer the right question. But yeah, I mean, I love to race. I'd race all the time if I could. And I had the fortunate opportunity to race a long time. It wasn't always handed to me, and you know, some years I missed out on rides because some other guy had a name and I didn't. But by race 4 or 6 or 7, I would get a call because they weren't qualified. Somebody wasn't qualifying, and they had a big sponsor, Dr. Pepper or Channel Lock or somebody, and they need to be in the race, and I would get a call. So, you know, and again, I had about 5 years where I got to race full time, and I was able to make a real good living and do it. And it's fun. It's taught me so much. So you learn marketing, you learn when you own a team too. You know, I own teams. I hired drivers when I was racing full time. I still had a team and had other drivers, and I had my own teams, and dealing with sponsors, marketing, promotions, how you get retail distribution, how you like you said, you're just not going to the track and driving.
No,
right.
Like, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, remember we used to go to Bristol? It'd be like 10,000 people at that one place, and you go sign autographs for like 4 hours. They do stints, and it was a full-time job. I think it's a little bit more relaxed now. It's a little bit more corporate, but we really used to engage with our fans, and we had a lot of events around fans. so between that and then the race shop stuff and doing pit stops, and I loved being around the cars and trying to be around my crew and work with them and let them know I was equal to them and we're part of the team, to, you know, traveling, and like it was full time and I love it. And I did get burnt out in late, you know, like 2009. I'd already done it for 20 some years. I think I've run, man, I had like 28 years. I ran at least 1 or 2 races in Xfinity or Cup consecutively, and I missed that a couple of years ago. But, you know, I would love to do it more now. I thought I had a great opportunity to run full time maybe next year, but I just don't want to get out and just get, I've had opportunities, people ask, but I just don't want to get out and just get in any car and run all day long. I got other great stuff going on, but I sure love going back and seeing my friends and so many
well, Stan, one more question before we get to our news and notes segment. I see the Chiefs hat. I got to know, you know, as a fellow Chiefs fan and such, how do you feel about their chances in the playoffs? Got a big game here this weekend going up against this very good Steelers team on a Sunday night. What do you think about their chances here of winning the Super Bowl, going back again?
Man, you never know. You know, in the playoffs, you can't take anybody for granted, in my opinion. I'm a huge football fan, and obviously the Chiefs have all the players and dynamics and coaching to go all the way. I wouldn't say they're as good as they were maybe last year or when they won the Super Bowl. I think overall they have the depth. They can win. But in the playoffs, any of those guys go. I mean, you got Rossberger is going to be his last year. Of course, he wants to, you know, close that out at the Super Bowl. I think the, you know, Steelers will play at a really high level for that one reason alone. They're obviously in the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, you're capable of any Sunday. Anybody can win on any Sunday, and I think that's really relevant to this weekend and all the playoff games. So I'm not super confident that we can walk away from this one, but, you know, I think, you know, we have a strong chance. And this is a weird year in the NFL.
It is.
There's a lot of really good teams that aren't, you know, you have that section of teams that are all like 11-5 or 11-6 and 10-7 or whatever. You have that group, and then you have the next group, but they're really good too, and they're all like 9 and, you know, just 2 games down, but they're good. And then you have the next section, so you have this whole group, you know, that's right in the hunt. I've never seen an average of so many teams that are so good.
Right.
You don't have like 6 or 7 that stand out. You literally have half the NFL's like legitimate. Can go win and play.
I mean, you're talking about Stanton. You know, this is a 14-team playoff. I think you could be realistically 8 or 9 teams.
I figured 7 to 9 is the Chiefs in that area, because they haven't had the consistency, and maybe they're trying to figure out how to like manage some of the new offensive line and some of the new defensive guys, right? But they haven't been consistent, so they fall in that range of I think 9's a great number. And yes, you can win from 9, but
right, David, he's a big Cowboys fan. I'd love to see a Chiefs Cowboys Super Bowl and just have to, you know,
boy, wouldn't that be unbelievable? And you know, the Cowboys are outstanding, but they've had their moments too.
Absolutely,
they've been more. I think they've been better overall than the Chiefs have on a consistent basis, but they have also had, you know, they've all had their ups and downs, but I still see some larger degrees of inconsistencies in the Chiefs and some of the other teams. Now, can they definitely wrap it all up, which most, you know, top tier teams do in the playoffs? Goals get in the playoffs, try to get in a good seed, try to get home field advantage. They didn't do that. They shouldn't have lost to Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's no slouch. So, you know, it's going to be fun the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big Chiefs fan, but golly, I respect Ben Roethlisberger, you know, his ability to play in the NFL for 18 years and, you know, to be as consistent as he has and to play as long as he has. I'd like to see him go out on top. You know, it's kind of a cool story, being able to just be in the playoffs and play the Chiefs. I mean, that was kind of unexpected, but they've been playing really good the last couple of games. And, I'm torn, but because I want to see Big Ben go out on top, So,
yeah, we all like to do that, but again, I'd rather see the Chiefs win. Ben's won won the Super Bowl. He has nothing to be ashamed of. I mean,
he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
If he wins Super, I'm proud of him. Then great, but I don't know. Maybe I'll switch my degree. They're just going to get stomped by the Reds. Terrible last game of his career.
Now, Dominic,
I met him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you remember when we did Kentucky? I think it was. He was whatever you call those fancy guys, famous guys, Grand Marshal.
Yeah.
He was a Grand Marshal of Kentucky.
Wow.
And I remember because I'm a football. I have a lot of football stories. My dad was friends with Dan Reeves, so like I was staying with NFL players and so on. So anyways, football. It's like I remember shaking his hand. My hand wouldn't even fit. Like my hand was great. He squeezed my whole hand, and my fingers were like.
So he got a big hand, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'm like, hi. He's like this big. He looks like a teddy bear, but he could eat like George Foreman, though. He could crush you just with like a. I'm shaking, and I try, and I grew up around my grandpa and my dad. Like when you a man, you shake a hand.
Absolutely.
I couldn't even. My hand would get crushed. There was no. I couldn't shake. It was just this like girl, just like.
Hey Stan, didn't he know you had to race, man? Don't hurt my hand. I got to race.
I'm tough that way, but I just felt like a wimp. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh. And I thought that guy thinks I'm the biggest wimp for sure. I couldn't even.
That's hilarious, man. Yeah. You'll never forget that handshake, will you?
I have another handshake story, but I broke my arm and they didn't know it. And I was racing. I shook this guy's hand, just met him. And
really?
Years later, I'm duck hunting with him. He's like, man, I thought you were such a wimp. You couldn't even barely shake my hand. I'm like, well, why did you tell me that a long time ago? He goes, well, I didn't want to make you feel bad. Just like you were like kind of a little weird and Hollywood kid, whatever. But I'm a heck of a shooter. Well, that's another time we went shooting at those NRA things.
Yeah.
I whooped everybody. So I'm like, well, I remember that. I broke my arm 2 days earlier on my motocross bike. And I didn't want to have a cast. I couldn't shake my hand. I could barely even touch anything. He just grabs my hand and I'm like,
oh my
like,
God.
I broke it up there where the muscles go, right?
And you didn't have a cast on?
No, because I needed to race my car. They're not going to let me
Man, that's nuts. Yeah. Dude, that's nuts, man. Wow.
I raced with all kind of broke my femur, and a few days, like a week and a half later, I'm racing my collarbone. A couple days later, I'm racing my foot. I broke my foot on a movie, shattered it in 11 places. I didn't put a cast on. I put my race shoe on, which is good because it's tight. I broke 11 bones in half. I raced 4 days later. That was my breaking foot, and the first race was St. Louis.
Oh my God, that's a lot of breaking there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's my long story from Beth Rossberger breaking.
Yeah, that's cool. That's all good.
All right, I feel like a wimp.
Well, hey, real quick, Stan, I'm going to take like 3 or 4 steps back because you kind of touched on it, but you've got me curious now before we move on to news and notes. What is the likelihood we see you back in a Cup car this year or any of NASCAR's National 3 Series in 2022?
I think pretty good. I don't think I'll get to race full time, but I think if things go right, I've actually been working hard with some people I've worked with in the past, and I'd love to get into at least 10 or 15 races. I thought I had a real good deal for trucks, and we went kind of towards the Cup thing, and that didn't work out, and we lost a bunch of time and momentum. But it'd be awesome to go to 10 or 15 races at least, and be in a good situation where you can run. And,
well, I hope that comes.
I would love to do it. I would do it full time if it was the right situation, but again, I have to manage like importance of other things where I just don't like go run to run. It's fine to go run a few races, but not every weekend.
Sure.
Dave knows how that is, and
That's
it sure be fun. I have fun. All my friends, like I grew up around that's my family, and then I have my movie family, so it really feels at home when I'm at the track. And
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
We got a few more things that we need to get to before we wrap up. We're going to hand things off to our resident Packer fan here, Dominic Aragon, who's got today's news and notes. Dom, how we feel about those Packers, by the way?
I would pick them over the Chiefs to go all the way, to be honest with you.
So here's the thing. I am banking. I'm telling you what, #1 seed. Packers look strong like usual. They're going to get to the NFC Championship game, and then they're going to get rolled by Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to go to the
I hope so.
I'll tell you what, you can bank it. You can count on my team making it to the NFC Championship game. Beyond that, I have no idea. So we'll just have to.
I'll take a bet with you. I'm gonna pick the Packers over Brady's team this year.
So you're gonna make me force my hand and bet against my team.
Well, you already bet against them.
You already put it out.
I heard
I guess
it.
so. Yeah,
What are we wagering?
Yeah, what are we wagering, Stanton?
Well, something I can afford.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'll send you a case of my wine.
Yeah, there you go. That'll work.
There we go.
I'll like it. And if I lose, what I owe you?
The Green Bay hat.
There you go.
That sounds
Okay.
good. All right.
I have friends that used to play for Green Bay. Some of my
Really?
dad's friends, yeah. I have tons of football, so we can do a segment just on football.
We're gonna have you back. Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's cool.
So we begin our motorsports news and notes segment with some news that hit on Monday of maybe news that kind of came out of left field, if you will. Aric Almiorla announced his retirement from the NASCAR Cup Series at the conclusion of the 2022 NASCAR season. Almiorla has run in the Cup Series since 2007, on and off, and full-time since the year 2012 rather, and made a playoff appearance in 2018 with Stewart-Haas Racing, has raced for the organization since 2018, and has picked up 3 wins in his tenured career in NASCAR. He, guys, is citing that he's going to spend time away from the racetrack beyond 2022 and wants to see his children grow up and spend time with them while he thinks his children think he's cool.
Yeah, guys, kind of reading between the lines here with Aric. This reminds me of his teammate Clint Boyer's retirement a year ago. Of that, okay, he's not that old, but he probably wasn't going to be brought back to that ride, and he didn't want to step to lesser equipment. That's what I would think this is more what it's really about. I know the family comments and all that sound nice, and the good PR spin and such, but I would think that's probably what more this is likely is. Don't you think, David?
Man, my opinion is, it comes back to, he probably knows that his sponsor's not coming back. And kind of tired of what you said, he, when you race at the level that he races at with Stewart-Haas, that's one of the powerhouse teams. It don't get much better than that. And without the funding that he's had the last 3-4 years, he would have to step down to not one of the top powerhouse teams, and looking at, Stanton was talking about it earlier. Man, when you're full time, it's a grind. It's tough. Just constant, and it just, people have no idea the commitments and the sacrifices you make to be able to do that. But obviously you're making a living. That's what we'd love to do. But it's still a challenge and tough. And having kids like Aric does and a family, I think there's more to the story, Tyler, like what you're saying. But if you don't have the funding like you've had over the last 3 or 4 years, I guess, he wants to retire. I was really shocked to hear that, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting to hear that. That was surprising and new. What's your thought on that, Stanton?
Yeah, well, I read that, I think it was yesterday or maybe this morning.
Right.
And I was surprised. He's such a competitor and obviously capable of winning. He wins, generally once a year or something, but he's a competitor. And I think a little bit of both. There's a certain point to where you have a lot of young guys coming in and they have sponsors or backing, and there's only so much room. So, if you don't have a deal, this isn't like it used to be so much, and not discrediting him because he's phenomenal. And I've seen him since he started. I was already racing full time. So, yeah, it's a tough position. And like I said, he's got a family, and there is a point in a career, and when both on stunts in professional sports and different things, when you have to take everything to such a degree to be not just out there, but to be competitive to win races, which he is regularly, there's an extreme amount of effort and mental like capacity and fatigue and risk that you take, like you're willing to take personally, and it's part of what you do in that race car. And if you can take that risk every lap and you drive the edge, and it's a grind. There's no, you see it in all professional sports. People break down, and that's why some people are really good and some people in professional sports aren't quite as good. And I think, he's got his family. Maybe, like I said, the next best opportunity is not so great. He's already been in great opportunities. He's won races. It's family time now. He doesn't want to push that edge. And it's a grind. It's a mental challenge when you go to the track. It's not all fun and games and like stunts. It's all, everybody thinks it's Hollywood and glamorous. No, you're out there risking your life, beating the hell out of yourself, and you're taking risk, and it's stressful. And so it's the same thing with race cars. So, I was surprised. I figured he'd be another 5 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not like he's super old. He was a contender this year to win several races. So it is a bit of a surprise. I think there's more to it than that, but heck, he's comfortable, goes out, hangs out with his family, won races, and he's a great guy. His wife's great. I've known him all for I'm not really close to him. I knew his wife a lot more when she was working with teams, but just a great family. And he came up and he did it too. Like he earned his right to be in.
Yes.
Yeah, he's 37 years old, and Dominic, there's a couple things that come to mind when I think of Aric Almiorla. One of those, the first is his first career Xfinity win, which was actually won by Denny Hamlin, and the whole controversy that was around that. I felt so bad for him how that all went down. And then the very first time I actually met Dominic, there was a press conference where you called him by the wrong name.
I sure did. And to top it all off, too, they handed me the microphone. It was at a time, 2014, they were doing the not knockout. Yeah, it was knockout qualifying. So they'd bring in the top three into the media center, and Fox Sports would broadcast live on FS1 the press conferences. And I grabbed the mic, and it's him and Brian Vickers up there at the podium. And they qualified second and third, and just wanted to ask him what their chances were, how they felt about their chances to win on Sunday. And I addressed him as Aric Almiorla. So he quickly grabs the mic and he tells me, "So my name's Aric and I like my chances." And I just feel my heart drop into my stomach, like, oh crap, I said the name wrong. But I'll tell you, it was a great conversation starter among media members that weekend. And Aric and I had a laugh about it after I talked to him about it. He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." But yeah, that was certainly a welcome to NASCAR moment for sure.
Yeah, that was funny. That was certainly memorable. Dominic, what else we got going on?
Well, the Chilli Bowl Nationals are going on in Tulsa, in your backyard there, Tyler. And of course,
my hometown.
Your hometown, your own backyard. We know there's NASCAR connections every year at the Tulsa Nationals, or the Chilli Bowl Nationals rather. And all of those names on the headlines include Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Jesse Little, Tanner Berryhill, Carson Osavar, Christopher Bell, Ryan Newman, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Ryan Ellis. And guys, we know the last 5 years, a NASCAR Cup Series regular has taken the A-Main on the Saturday night. The A-Main will be on January 15th, Saturday. Christopher Bell won between 17 and 19. And guys, Kyle Larson is one of the last two.
Yeah, I would expect it to be no different. It's going to be either Kyle Larson or Christopher Bell ultimately coming home with the title on Saturday night. But I got to tell you, I've been following this all week. I've been very impressed with Chase Elliott. Chase doesn't have a whole lot of dirt experience, and yet he was able to win one of the features the other night. And all the talk down there in Tulsa has been how much better of a dirt racer Chase Elliott is now compared to what he was a couple years ago, that he's starting to catch on this dirt racing thing. So, David, the Chilli Bowl, what a great way to really just kick off the racing season really there down in Tulsa.
Man, I was reading somewhere, and it's the most entries they've ever had. And if anybody's ever been to the Chilli Bowl, man, it's something to see. I mean, there's just, how many heat races and how many features, we call them consolation races, to make it to the feature. But man, it's amazing. They start like I don't know, you start like on Elm, you make it, you go to the next one, you make it, you keep transferring. But I don't know how the process works, how you're guaranteed a starting spot in the A main for Saturday nights to win the entire Chili Bowl. But man, you got the best of the best midget drivers, sprint car drivers, and it's cool to see and to hear our NASCAR guys, of seeing Jesse Little down there. I had no idea that Jesse Little ever drove a midget ever. And then Ryan Ellis, and I didn't hear JJ Yaley, but man, just some of our NASCAR guys can hold their own, and to see Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson, obviously those are the guys that the last 2, 3, 4 years, those are the guys you got to beat to win the Chili Bowl. But there was a feature last night, and I think I read this morning that Kyle Larson finished second, and I don't even remember the guy that won, but he got beat last night. And so, man, there's some very, very, very talented race car drivers that drive these midgets. And man, I've been 3 or 4 times over the years. Unfortunately, I thought I might go this weekend and watch the feature Saturday night. I don't know yet, because we might go to the Kansas City game, Tyler's, Sunday. But man, it's something to see, man. It's incredible. And I don't know about you, Stan, but I'd love to jump in one of those midgets sometime just to see what it feels like, see if we could do it.
Yeah, it'd be super fun. I mean, the funnest racing I think I've ever done has been dirt racing. So, I've talked to a lot of guys about going before and racing in it, but it also is just like crazy how many heat races there are, and like people are so aggressive. They just take you out, get in, and I think that adds to a lot of the pressure and not so fun. Somebody's going to cream you to get into heat. So, yeah, I mean, obviously NASCAR guys have done fairly well there in the past as far as winning those, and I think we have more than we've ever had in there. But I'd love to go. I've got a lot of friends that race them, and it'd be sure fun. It's so small though.
It is small.
How is this race so popular? It's such a tiny track.
Yeah, I mean, they literally take the Tulsa Expo Center and just turn it into a racetrack for a week, and then it goes back to being a place for the fair and such like that. It's a unique facility for this type of thing, and Tulsa's done a great job hosting it all these years. And I mean, you mentioned all the NASCAR guys, Dominic, they're involved in this. I mean, we're seeing as a result of that a lot of notable names were not available for this Daytona testing session. I mean, you look at Hendrick Motorsports, they only had one current driver that was able to test one of their cars. Being William Byron, I believe, was the only one that was actually out there testing. I mean, you had Alex and Chase and Kyle out at the Chili Bowl. They had to bring Dale Jr. back to be able to test at Daytona.
That was kind of cool to see Dale Jr. back in a Hendrick car. I think that was pretty awesome. And you guys might know, I don't know, but who was in the other Hendrick cars?
I'm not exactly sure, Dom. Do you know?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but yeah, I share that same sentiment. To see that headline a few days ago, NBC reporting that Dale Earnhardt Jr. got to get back behind the wheel in a Cup car in Daytona. Really cool to always hear that. You always know that's going to be very popular to see Dale Jr. back behind the wheel, especially with his hometown or his home Cup Series team.
Remember, I can't wait to hear the results and to get some comments from the guys and see how the new car, how it drafted, and and hear the characteristics. Is it tight? Is it loose? Do they suck up well? I mean, I can't wait to get some feedback and learn how the tests went, because I saw little bits and pieces of it on social media today, but I was so busy I didn't really get to read anything up on it. Maybe any of you guys might know or heard anything. Have y'all?
Well, I know they had a drafting session in the afternoon, and NASCAR had about, I think it was 20 drivers, right, Tyler, go out and do some drafting, do some laps. And NASCAR seemed very pleased with the results. So it was the only session that they did, but that was really all I had seen come out from the afternoon session.
Yeah,
Okay.
It is interesting to see the lack of Cup drivers not take part in this session, especially with the new car down at the Chili Bowl. I remember years ago, Dom, when Tony Stewart would never show up for these testing sessions. He'd be like, screw this, I'm busy at the Chili Bowl, and that for a while that didn't go over well with some people.
Absolutely. Or Dale Earnhardt, you can even back it up a couple generations there. Earnhardt hated a test. And you see a lot of these big guys, marquee guys, not want to get in the car, and they would put different people in. And I think Dave Marcus was the guy that would test for Dale Earnhardt. So
yeah, but I think this year is more critical than any. I get when we had our old cars and not much changed, and it's like you're doing these boring laps, you're going out and making your regular qualifying laps, and you're trying a little piece of this on the D pillar, you're trying a little this on the, on the right rear quarter, and you're doing one thing at a time. It's boring. I mean, it's fun when you first go because you're one of them driving anything, but after that, it's like, all right, testing can go to somebody else. But I think with these new cars, I think they're missing a little bit of an opportunity to go to the Chili Bowl. And I don't know how this works out with the team. I'm sure the teams are not too happy. I get any other year, but this year where you have so much on the line starting out the season, Daytona 500 is the biggest race, by far bigger than the Chili Bowl. You win $1 million whatever dollars, but it starts a mass. If you can win that race or run in the top 5 and finish there, and I think people are going to really have hard times with these cars during the race. If you can manage your equipment during this race, figure out how that setup is long term and what you need to do. And if you don't have the every lap valuable seat time, not that they're not great drivers, they don't know this car, and they need to be able to communicate what they need to their team, what they need out of this car. And that driver is super pivotal. Even though Dale Jr. is a great super speedway driver, I think it's a big lost opportunity for these guys to be away. Now, does the team have the depth to overcome that? Yeah, probably. I personally wouldn't do it because I think it puts them at a disadvantage at the most important race.
I totally agree with you 110%, Stanton. No doubt about it. I'm surprised too. You know what I mean? I'm surprised too. But you look at that Powerhouse Hendrick organization. Like you said, I'm sure that they're so depth they'll be okay. But man, this is
But when you go, like they don't have a lot of practice time. What's the most important thing? You need to figure out what your car's capable of so you know where the limits of it is,
Absolutely.
Right? If you don't know that, you're going to you can't waste 10 laps down there because the practice time is not a lot. Now, fortunately for there, you have the twins, right?
Right.
If you really want to get in a car before that you have not a lot of time in and you're going to go race it for the twin 125s to figure it out then. Every lap in the draft down there is going to be super valuable.
Absolutely.
And it's a lost opportunity. Great for Chili Bowl, great for racing, great for race fans to see these guys race and other stuff. I just don't think this year, it'd be my year to opt out to get time in this new car.
Absolutely.
Because that's going to go to more race. It's not just that race you're going to learn something for. You're going to learn for a lot of races and again, track time is so valuable.
Right.
And I think every lap in this car and communicating with your crew is like, I would.
Well, on top of that, going along the same lines too, the intermediate racetracks are now the closest they've ever been to the super speedways as far as the differentiation between the two. It's the closest they've ever been to each other now. So, those notes mean more than just the 4 super speedway races now. I mean, there's stuff I'm sure that can, transition to some of those intermediate races too. Something to think about there. Let's go ahead and get to our Ask David segment. We ask you to submit questions to us on Facebook at David Starr Podcast, Twitter at Starr Podcast, email davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. You can write to us there. And we have questions for both David and Stanton here. And so let's go ahead and get to our first question from the inbox. This one, it comes from Mike. Mike wants to know, this question's for Stanton. Stanton, tell us about your bobsled challenge that you were a part of.
Oh, man, the bobsled race was super fun. I don't know how much time we have here, but so when I was growing up, my mom was a World Cup skier, Olympic skier, Hall of Fame. My grandpa coached U.S. ski team. So winter sports I love, right? And the only time you got to see bobsled was in the Olympics. They didn't air it back in the 80s when I was a kid or 70s. They aired it for the Olympics. So I used to stay up and watch ski jumping because I always wanted to ski jump. And I watched bobsledding, and they always aired super late. My mom would stay up with me. So when Jeff got involved with the bobsled, he's like, I'm like, dude, I love bobsled. Anytime I have an opportunity, like, come hang out, whatever. I want to go see it, help, whatever. And I was racing a lot then. And So they came up with this bobsled challenge thing, and we all went up there, and Dick Trickle, Boris, myself, I don't know, there was a Lucas, the drag racer. There was a bunch of guys. We had so much fun. It was one of the best weekends I've had. And so then I got with the guy who ran the bobsled stuff, did the TV stuff, and then they pitched it to ESPN, I think it was on at the time. And like, well, let's make Stanton like go from this NASCAR driver never really racing bobsled, and let's put him in competition. So I actually got to race on like the real deal.
Wow.
I went to Calgary. I went to Calgary and trained with the Olympic guys for like 2 months. I raced the North America Cup race there against World Cup guys. I got in the top 6 against guys who've been in the World Cup. And then they're like, because the goal was to get me to go race run the World Cup at Lake Placid, and then do a whole show about training. Because I, professional motocross race, train, and all car racing, how it correlates, how technology correlates, mental. So we did these shows, and they aired them just before the bobsled races every weekend. Maybe it was on Speed that was on then. But anyways, I had so much fun. I went to Calgary, froze my butt off for 2.5 months, trained with them. And I'm small. I'm like this tiny guy, but I could run quick for a little bit. But that was my disadvantage, is I'm small, and I'm pushing even a heavier sled because it has to meet the weight. But yeah, that bobsled thing was so fun. Then I went to class. I did the national championships, and then we're like, well, he's good enough. He's not going to full run. Let's keep racing like real races. I bought sleds. Really competitive sled, Olympic sleds that won medals to help the U.S. team guys that didn't have, because there's a discrepancy. That's why Jeff got involved. We didn't have good equipment. The depth of the equipment wasn't great. So I bought sleds and provided them for guys. One of the guys won the national championships in one of my sleds, and then got on the World Cup team and got to race World Cup. I've helped the Australian guy, didn't have a sled. Let him use my sleds, and he made the last Olympics because he qualified with a competitive sled. I helped this Brazilian kid. I've helped some of the Brazilian girls and English girls. So it's since then I've been helping athletes, because my mom went through a lot in the Olympics and World Cup and stuff. And there's a real need to help athletes there with equipment. They don't make money. A lot of them don't. They're just passionate about what they do. They work harder than anybody you can imagine. So that all rooted from being around winter sports and loving, because I didn't grow up around bobsled. We didn't have ski, even though I jumped some of the biggest cliffs you could ever imagine. I didn't have skis. Those are things I always wanted to do. So Jeff made that happen, and we had such a great time. That was one of the funnest. Talk about a real race car. When you're in trouble in a race car, you can lift and get on the brakes, right?
Right.
You're not saving it. You're going down, and you're going down fast, and it's violent, and things come at you fast. And if you don't anticipate it, you're crashing.
Sam, did you ever crash?
I crashed twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I crashed once in Calgary. And that's what they impressed. I went to Lake Placid, it was the toughest track in the world, and I never crashed. And they're like, how's it going? But I understood fall lines from skiing and lines from motocross and car racing, right? So using the fall line and anticipating movements and seat of the pant feel for motocross and cars, all that applied to the bobsled, and just slight touches. So it is probably one of the absolute funnest things I've ever done.
Wow.
Talk about exhilarate. Like, you don't get that in a race car, right? The speed becomes relative.
Right.
Everybody's going the same speed. We're used to that, right? Indianapolis was pretty cool. That was pretty fast, going 230 into a corner that you don't think you can make. And you're like, okay, hold it wide open and hope to make it. But in a bobsled, it's this wide.
Right.
Then it opens up in these turns, and you're dropping 20 feet down into the next turn. And
Wow.
you're, just think about how you have to look ahead at Bristol or Darlington.
Sure.
Well, you can't look that far ahead. Like, the corners are so tight. You're trying to look ahead, and it's violent, and you're trying to look at your line, but look far ahead. Well, the peripheral, because some of them are so sharp, or when they put the the covers on the tracks, then you really can't look ahead, and you really got to go off of feel in memory. It's crazy because when you get behind, you're like, you got to catch up somehow, and it's like caution to the wind. Like you just, because you the only control you have is steering. It's like, oh, I screwed up. I'm gonna just put the brakes on and regroup. There's no regrouping. You're along for the ride. It's pretty wild.
So was Jeff Bodine involved in that with you at all?
Yeah, well, Jeff organized the whole, like whatever you said the name of it is, I forget the name, but he had this charity event that raised money and awareness for the bobsled team, and a bunch of the NASCAR and drag racers and some other drivers went up, and I think there was like 12 of us, and we did this. They made a sled that wasn't monobody, but and they taught us. We started halfway and learned, and we actually started at the 3/4 mark in the race. But when I went back to do it for real, it's a process. You work your way up the track. And the first time you go from the top and push off, it's fast, and things happen fast. It's like, I shouldn't be here right now. I gotta get down.
Wow.
That's probably the most exhilarating thing I've definitely done out of all the stuff I've done. It's one of the coolest experiences.
That's amazing.
At Park City, you're going like 90 miles an hour.
Wow.
And stuff happens fast, and you're on ice.
Yes.
And then when you go down World Cup ice, like for the national championships and these real races, like the North America Cup, is like that ice is like, it changes. It's like the track changes from hot to cold.
Wow.
You have to adapt to that, and it's a different animal from practice track to racetrack, how they prep it. It's like that, and they hand grind those things. They
really
grind the ice in the corners, and they lay the mist down, and like, it's an art form to build the track, and it's an art form to definitely drive. I got to do the luge too, or the skeleton, the one where you go head first. That was super fun. I was in Kitzbühel.
That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, and Katie Eulander was a friend of mine, does the women's. She's been in like 4 Olympics. And I'm like, I was over there for Christmas by myself. I'm like, well, I'll come over to your race, because it was just after Christmas. They had the Australian National Championships. And I get there, and they're like, we don't have a forerunner to make it a FIBT official race. We have to have a forerunner. And she's like, well, why don't you do it? And the coach is like, yeah, why don't you do it? I'm like, I don't have anything. And the Austrian coach is like, I have shoes, I have a suit. She's like, you'll be fine, just go. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, this is what you your track. I got in. Thank God I've been in the bobs. I wouldn't know what to do.
Wow. That's amazing, man. They threw you in there.
Yeah, but how fun is that? I'm in Austria, and the next thing I know, I'm doing a skeleton down the track. And it was so fun, though. Everybody's like, here's this, that. And I used one of her sleds, and I ran and made it an official FIBT race.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Wow,
that's great, guys. Got another question in the inbox. This one's from Donnie. Donnie wants to know, for both of you here, favorite Ricky Rudd memories. We'll start with you, Stanton.
Oh, geez. I knew Ricky a long time because my dad, when he raced Cup, became friends with Ricky. So I've spent a lot of time with Ricky and Linda. And I just say, just to be on the track with these iconic guys. So it's like, I'm racing next to Ricky. I'm actually beating Ricky Rudd. Like, I just remember being around him and being with those guys. I have a good picture of him early on in my career. He has me in a headlock goofing around. It was in one of the NASCAR magazines. But I've spent a lot of time with him. I worked at his shop when I didn't have a ride. I did his marketing and his licensing deals.
Wow.
And handled that there for a while. And then I got a ride, and he's like, yeah, go do it. But I committed, and he put me to work for him in his shop. And that was probably mid-90s when he had the Tide deal. I do remember I helped him make the Daytona 500. He left me out to dry. That's probably my worst memory of it, because I had a great car. I was actually super fast in all the practices, and I could run anywhere. And I was in the front pack. I think it was 6th, and we broke away a long ways from the rest of the pack. And Jimmy Spencer was in front of me, and I don't know, he decides to start going too wide, and we all start racing, and that next pack caught us like in 5 laps. We literally were a half straightaway ahead.
Wow.
And then I lost the draft a little bit with Ricky, and he was running high, and I could run anywhere. So I just pushed him, and we pushed him. I pushed him back up to the lead pack. We got in, and we got up mid pack, and he jumped in a hole and left me hanging. And I got back, and then he lost the draft because he wasn't handling good. And anyways, he was the last one to get in the race, and I was the last one to miss the race. That was my worst memory. So I have a lot of good memories with him, but one bad one that supersedes it all.
I love that. The memory you have, he hung you out to dry. He
hung me out to dry. I'm like, you have a provisional too, and I'm in this little team just coming in, and I actually had blown a tire, like Jeff Hammond, everybody like on the shows, like the best Chevy, Stanton Barrett. And he has a chance to win. I really had a chance to win the twin one. I mean, I led drafts and the whole thing, and I blew it. And Jimmy Spencer was behind me again. I blew a tire, and I thought it was him just hitting me down the back straightaway. It was super hard. And I got squirrely, and I look in my mirror. I'm like, that, you know what? Because I knew it was behind me. And I look back, I see black stuff flying. I'm like, oh, crap. And I'm slapping, and I'm just trying to not wreck. It got to the corner, and I was slowed down, and I waved my hand, and Darrell Waltrip just passed me. And then the pack had gone by me because I was second in the pack and on the next to the wall. I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna take out the whole field if I don't keep saving this thing. So I got slowed down enough, they passed me, and it just started to lose it because I was at the corner and never hit anything, but the apron just tore my front end up, and I spent like all night with the crew. NASCAR let us stay late, but that affected the car a little bit, but I had a great car. And then Ricky Rudd, I tried to help a friend, and he wasn't so friendly to me.
Hey, Stan, I don't mean to interrupt here, but man, hey guys, have y'all noticed that Stan's talked a lot about Jimmy Spencer? Stan and Jimmy Spencer, y'all have had a lot of run-ins, man.
Yeah, you wrecked me at the Bud shootout. Like yeah.
That's funny. David, what about you and Ricky Rudd?
Man, I'm just a fan of Ricky Rudd's. Man, he's respect his accomplishments. He's obviously one of our heroes in our sport. He's done a lot. One of the things I remember one of the first times I ever been to the Daytona International Speedway, and this was, God, I want to say in the 80s. I'm walking into the stands, and I walk through a hallway, and it opens up, and the track's right there. I think I was in a tri-oval, and I remember seeing it was a blue and yellow number 15 Wrangler car, and it was flipping. I watched it flip 10 times. I don't remember, but it was him, and I don't know if it was the twin 125s or practice, but he flipped. And I remember that you think the guy's dead. The ambulance is over there, and you don't know what's going on, but he ran the Daytona 500. I think they had to tape his eyes open. I remember they taped his eyes open. His eyes were so swollen, and the guy raced the Daytona 500. I don't remember how he did, but I always remember Ricky Rudd flipping when I first walked through there and looked out on the racetrack. He was coming off turn 4. And it was right before the trial. I don't know if he got loose off of 4. I don't remember the situation, but I think that story, I think a lot of people know that he had 2 black eyes, and they didn't think he was going to be able to run the 500. They taped his eyes open because his eyes were so swollen, and he raced the whole race. And I think he was driving for Bud Moore. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that was in the 80s. So that
was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But I don't know Ricky Rudd like Stanton knows him, but man, I'm a big fan of his.
I got to go back to Ricky Rudd. I got I used to live in Boone, right? And I used to go to races as much as I could just to watch how
Right.
people go. I used to love going to North Wilkesboro and sit in the stands. And I got to see that race with him and Dale Earnhardt battling it out, banging on each other. And that was a pretty awesome race. But what a great driver he was. And it was always fun to watch him, especially at the short tracks.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, we're about out of time. Stanton, before we go, tell us where people can catch up with you and see what all you got going on. What's the easiest way for people to follow what you got going on, man?
Mostly I post a little bit of stuff on Instagram and Facebook. It's Stanton Barrett. It's my name. I cover a little bit of stuff on my wine, Stanton Barrett Family Wines. And that's on Instagram too. But and you can go on the website, StantonBarrettFamilyWines.com. But yeah, I'm pretty low key. I don't post a lot. I post a lot of nature stuff, skiing and flying in my airplane and motorcycle riding and stuff like that. But you can keep up with me a little bit there. I don't post really any movie stuff too often. I'm a little low key on that. But yeah, that's kind of how you track me down or try to stay up with my somewhat day to day.
I need to try that wine, Stanton. I bet that's some good stuff you guys got.
I'm looking forward to trying it with that bet, Stan. So thank you.
It'll be at the demise of your team if it happens.
I win either way. I'm just saying, I win either way.
David, what's going on with you, man? Busy week as you're counting down the weeks of Daytona at this point.
Man, just trying to finish up my deals and man, just it's stressful time and trying to finish up sponsor, trying to know who's in with me, who's not in with me. And man, there's a lot going on, working on our racing school stuff there at the Texas Motor Speedway. Hopefully going to make it to Kansas City for the game Sunday. If not, take my boys to the Chilli Bowl for the big feature Saturday night. But man, just right in the middle of putting everything together so we can announce what our deal is for 2022. And I know you guys are interested, but I'm hoping that Stanton will be on the racetrack with us this year. I'd love to see you out there, Stanton, and racing Cup or Xfinity or the trucks. I think it's cool, the longevity of your career and the passion you have for it. I think the sport it's a better sport having you involved in it as long as you have been. So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you very much. I hope to be out there as well. With you all.
Dominic, what's happening with you, man?
I'll just stay busy covering the sport, theracingexperts.com and ESPN Radio Albuquerque when we do. So just keep staying busy that way. And yeah, it's been awesome. What about you, Todd?
I'm going to try to get out to that Chiefs game with David on a Sunday and experience that. Otherwise, actually going back to Tulsa for a couple days as well. So I'll probably run into David somewhere the next couple of days, whether it's Tulsa or Kansas City, one of the two. But should be fun and a lot of stuff going on, but certainly glad to do it. That's why they pay us the little bucks, around here. We got to go. As always, subscribe to Let's Go Racing on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Leave us that 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit that like button. We certainly appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at Starr Podcast, Facebook at David Starr Podcast, and by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Part of the Studio Soapbox Network with new shows out each and every day. Make sure to check those out. We certainly do appreciate it. We'll put the checkered flag out on this episode number 50 in the books of Let's Go Racing. For Stanton Barrett, David Starr, Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. Saying so long. This has been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.